Elon Musk humiliates Newsom again, this time over California's fake fixes that couldn't fix the state from bankrupting. 2 years ago, the state boasted a $100 billion surplus. Today, the state faces a massive deficit. According to the Legislative Analyst's Office, the shortfall is about $73 billion, far higher than the governor's number. And that is Musk's whole point. If Newsom's fixes were real, the gap would shrink. If the gap doesn't shrink, they're fake fixes dressed as reform. Now, if we look at what really happened, it is easy to understand what went wrong. A few years ago, revenues were hot. Tech stocks were up. Taxes from the biggest companies poured in there like there was no end to it. And Newsom talked about the situation as if it could have been California's permanent state. But according to the LAO, the problem swelled when revenues fell, especially from high earners. The massive exodus of companies and billionaires was a big hit, and the reason for that exodus was questionable decisions by Newsom. What's new is how the governor sells the response. He blames everything but himself for California's downfall, and according to Musk, that is not leadership, that is reckless. Start with the 10,000 vacant state jobs. The administration announced it would eliminate them to help close the gap. The internet joked they were slashing imaginary jobs to cover magically missing money. Musk piled on and said Newsom is the worst governor ever, someone who had unlimited potential but collapsed with his bizarre decisions. Regular people got it immediately. You can't claim painful sacrifice when no real workers are laid off. According to Cal Matters and PBS, this was the exact plan pitched. Scrub vacancies, trim hundreds of programs, and call it discipline. A plan that created about $1.5 billion in savings by removing ghost positions from budgets. But as Bloomberg noted, that doesn't touch the core drivers. It cleans up a spreadsheet, not a deficit. Musk called it what it looked like, a headline, not a fix. So where did Newsom spend so much money? In the boom, programs expanded, promises grew, projects ballooned. Then the tide went out and the obligations remained. The governor pitched $27.6 billion in immediate actions and $32.8 billion over 2 years. But here is the test again. Does the shortfall shrink in a way that families can feel? If the same scoreboard still shows a canyon, you didn't fix the leak, you changed the caption. Newsom has a defense. He said storm disasters delayed tax filings and messed up timing. Fine. But those events don't explain the reliance on press release savings. They don't explain why mega projects keep burning billions with very little to show. The LAO warned in February 2024 that the shortfall was much larger under realistic revenue assumptions, closer to $58 to $73 billion. That gap between messaging and math is exactly what Musk calls out. If your fix is mostly moving numbers on paper, the pressure returns the moment the economy breathes wrong. Here's the plain language test that Elon likes. If the fix worked, why did the hole reopen in 2025? After lawmakers passed tens of billions in remedies, Sacramento had to acknowledge another roughly $12 billion problem the next spring. Bloomberg and the Los Angeles Times both documented the new shortfall. In other words, the fix didn't fix it. That is the humiliation. Not an insult, but the scoreboard. The budget hole kept growing back, which proves the governor's solutions didn't change the underlying costs or the revenue roller coaster. When you run a company, you learn that anything that doesn't touch drivers is a press release, not a plan. Fake fix number 2 is the habit of underplaying the size of the problem and calling it stability. Elon hates that because it erodes trust. When the LAO puts the hole in the $58 to $73 billion range and the administration sells a lower narrative, people don't feel led, they feel managed. And here is where the business mindset matters. According to the Hoover Institution synthesis, California's revenue is highly volatile because it leans on high earners. That boom-bust cycle doesn't care about slogans. It demands structural reform, not vacancy scrubs. If you don't adjust costs and stabilize the base, the hole returns. That is what we just lived through. This pattern didn't start with budgets, it started with rules. In 2020, when Alameda County shut Tesla's Fremont plant, Musk called the orders fascist, reopened anyway, and dared the state to stop him. He said the system was hostile to builders, too many agencies, too many permits, too little common sense. That clash set the tone for everything that followed. Back then, the message sounded harsh. Today, it sounds like a prediction that came true. When you multiply approvals for everything, nothing gets built on time or on budget. And when your fix is a press conference, not a permit overhaul, nothing changes tomorrow morning. After that clash, Musk moved Tesla's headquarters to Texas. He said California's taxes and rules punished people who actually make things. That was the start of a long business migration, not a one-off move. Founders watched and took notes. If California's headline solutions worked, you wouldn't see an exit trend. You'd see a return trend. Instead, investors and engineers keep saying the same thing. We'll go where we can ship. There's even a regulator that Newsom himself has sparred with, the California Coastal Commission. Musk sued after the commission blocked increases to SpaceX launch activity from Vandenberg. At points, the governor publicly sympathized because the process could freeze projects that the state claims to support. That's the contradiction. Musk keeps mocking. You can't pitch innovation and green jobs, then route builders through a maze that takes years. The fake fix is to say we support you while the file sits in a queue. The wildfire crisis made the split public. Musk posted about water management and looting. Newsom fired back and accused him of spreading lies and encouraging crime. While that back and forth grabbed headlines, local reporting showed a harder truth. Residents were frustrated with speed, coordination, and planning. That is the core of Musk's attack. You can police narratives online all you want. If people can't get timely help or rebuild without red tape, your fix is messaging, not management. Now let's talk about the poster child for what Elon calls burning cash for optics. The California high-speed rail. This was sold as the future. What the public got was ballooning cost estimates, minimal operable track, and timelines that slide every year. LAist 2025 deep dive showed cost blowing past earlier ranges, with current estimates stretching to $89 to $128 billion, and the first segment limited to a Central Valley corridor. In June 2025, the White House rescinded about $4 billion in federal funding for the project, citing no viable path and missed deadlines. That's not me editorializing, that is official language. If the fix is to double down on a money sink, the budget hole isn't going to close, it grows teeth. Now, Musk's point is always simple. Focus on delivery, not decorations. Build what works. He said California picked the opposite. Permits that choke, mega projects that drift, and accounting that paints over cracks. Now you can hear it in his tone anytime the state announces a new plan. He asks, what number moves? Do costs drop? Does the hole shrink? Are timelines hit? If the answer is no, the plan is fake. In other words, a high school test. Show your work. If we can't circle a number that gets smaller, we didn't fix anything. There is also a spillover problem. Pew notes that big cities across America, including Los Angeles and San Francisco, are now staring at a multi-hundred-million-dollar gaps and even ratings pressure. The LA Times reported that LA wrestling with a near $1 billion hole, which is a downstream effect. When the state leans on temporary plugs, cities copy them. Then they hit the same wall. Services get cut without lowering future costs and the hole reopens. Elon's critique lands because it scales. The same thinking that writes a victory thread about empty job cuts also writes a city memo about shared sacrifice, while nothing structural changes. The numbers keep proving it. Now let's be fair, Newsom doesn't like Musk's tone. He says Elon spreads misinformation during crises like the LA wildfires and even accused him of encouraging looting. But pull back and look at outcomes. California's emergency bills are exploding. Water and forest management are political footballs, and the rebuild process bottlenecks behind commissions and permits. According to Politico's coverage, even the Coastal Commission became a flashpoint over post-wildfire rebuilding delays. For Elon, that's exactly the point. Process first, results last. And when results lag, costs spike and the hole gets deeper. It always loops back to the same meter. Elon also hits at the talent and tax base problem because he lived it. He moved major operations to Texas. He called California's regulatory maze suffocating. With high output companies relocate, the tax base thins. That means the same commitments sit on fewer shoulders. So even if the economy looks okay on a chart, the state's model becomes fragile. A single down year flips the whole spreadsheet red. That is why he keeps hammering on the business math. If you chase out builders and then sell cosmetic savings to voters, the whole becomes a permanent feature of the landscape. That is the real scoreboard, not a partisan jab, but the math of decline.